Immorality, anti-Semitism, and replacement theology are eroding the foundations of biblical Christianity. VaYechi presents the Heartland Connection, where Christians are equipped to walk out the truth in God's Word and to support the land and people of Israel.
Shalom and welcome to the Heartland Connection. We're so happy that you guys have joined with us here today as we study God's holy word right here in the heartland of Israel. And not only are we here in the heartland of Israel, we have Orthodox Jewish Rabbi Yonadav here to teach us today. Welcome, Rabbi Yonadav.
Shalom, Zach.
All right, so this week's Torah portion is VaYechi, and we are in Genesis chapter 47, verse 28. And VaYechi, here in verse 28, says, Jacob lived. So VaYechi is, and he lived. And speaking of Jacob living in Egypt for 17 years. So it's interesting here, right off the bat, we're talking about Jacob asking to be not buried in the land of Egypt, but that his body would be taken to the land of Israel. And it's interesting because it begins talking about Jacob, and then our portion ends with Joseph saying he wants also his bones to be taken out of Egypt and buried in the land of Israel. So our first question for you, Rabbi Yonadav, is why was it important for Jacob and Joseph that their bones and their body not be buried in Egypt, but to be taken back to the land of Israel?
I think the only example in the world, in the history, in the human history, the only example of nation that lived most of the time out of its land. Most of the time, most of the history. And even came back to its land is the nation, the people of Israel. There is no another example, and even if we don't talk about thousands of years, even hundreds of years, there is no such example in the world. How it can be? We can talk about the miracle, but also we have to talk about the mitzvah, the law of the Torah, and the permission of God, and also to find the details that bring this this incident to be like that, because Yaakov in Egypt told his sons, bury me on the Holy Land. And they did great journey to bury him. And the Egyptians saw this journey and came and joined. And also the Canaanites and Amorites saw it and said, wow, it's great mourning for the Egyptians. It was very impressive. And it set in the souls of his sons and grandsons that our land is the Holy Land. And we can be in Egypt hundreds of years, but we will come back to the land. And like that with Yosef too. He said, bury me in Israel. And it's written that in Exodus, Moshe took the bones of Yosef with him. And if we understand it like it's written, so the bones of Yosef were in the camp of the Levites. It's the middle of the camp of Israel. It was like a national mission. We are going to the land. We can't stay in Egypt. It's not only for their generation, but for all the generations. It's a message. We have our land. And even if we'll be generations out of our land, one day we will come back to our land.
Wow. That's really powerful. I think in some ways within Christianity, it's hard to think about a specific location being important, but it's obviously from the scriptures it talks over and over and over again about Israel, about Jerusalem, about these chosen places that God chose. And so maybe in some ways, for us as Christians especially, it's one of those areas where we just need to recognize, okay, this is what God decided. So we need to, if we want to serve God, if we want to align ourselves with Him, we have to recognize that He made that choice. He chose the land of Israel, that specific geographical location as the place that He chose, and then He chose the Jewish people to be there. And I was just thinking as you were saying that, how important it is that they were buried there, that when Abraham came into the land of Israel, he bought the burial place for Sarah, his wife, buried her there. He was buried there. And I don't know, I was just thinking about how with Yaakov coming into Egypt, if he had done something similar as what Abraham did when he came into Israel and said, oh, now we're in Egypt, I'll buy a burial place here, we'll bury, it could have really changed the minds of the people of Israel. They could have thought, oh, well, this is the new place. We were in Israel, and now we're here in Egypt. In some ways, maybe it even would make sense later when Egypt is destroyed. I mean, basically, God conquered Egypt, and normally when you would go in and conquer a land, you would conquer, then you would take over, you would build, but it's like they conquered it and then they left. And so this is very different than normal conquering and taking over places. They left the place that they conquered to a place that wasn't conquered, that they had to go and fight for. So it does seem really, really powerfully told here that there was something about the literal land of Israel that the Jewish people of Israel had to be there in order to fulfill their role of bringing redemption and salvation to the world. They couldn't do it in Egypt. They couldn't do it in Haran, any other place in the world. Now, Jewish people out in exile, they have to come back here to the land of Israel. There's something very, very significant, and I'm talking about it more because I want to really stress it to all my Christian brothers and sisters. Like, it's so important to recognize God's choosing in the land of Israel. I think it's a very, very important key thing. And as I've been here and seen Israel now coming back into the role of spreading light out into the nations, I just really want the other people in the nations to hear this message and to recognize how important this particular place is. It has changed my life, and I think if other people will connect and see it, they would be changed too.
And another fundament is in the necessary of deeds. Not only the heart. They could say, okay, you have to want, to love the land of Israel always. And that's enough. No. Bury me in the land. To make deeds that will bring this will to reality.
Yeah. Wow, it's good. Okay, so the next part of the portion talks about how Yaakov is getting older. He's about to die, and he gathers together his sons, and then he blesses them. So I guess our first question here is why was it important for Yaakov to do this before he died? Why was it important for him to speak these blessings to his sons?
Yaakov is establish new nation, new way, new religion, how to worship God, how to change the world. And how can he convince his sons to continue his way? It's new. It's not like us, that we have heritage of 1,000 of years.
Right.
It's a beginning. And he has to bring the message to his sons, and it's last time. He's going to die.
Mm-hmm.
Now what he will say will stay the last thing that he said.
Mm-hmm.
So he wants to influence his sons to the right way.
Mm-hmm. Are there modern traditions, like do grandfathers before they pass away bless their sons, or do you bless your sons within the Jewish community? Is that still a practice of today, or how does that work today's time?
Really, I got to say that my parents are alive, so I don't know exactly, but we have a custom when a father or mother write their commandment,
Like their will.
they have the let's call it the physical part and the spiritual part.
Interesting.
To write the guidance they want to leave to their children. So it's kind of a spiritual command.
And just in general, this is obviously like a very, very unique and important last blessing, kind of like you said, like the will being declared. But in general, you also bless your sons on Shabbat.
That's right.
And the Kohanim bless the people. So there's lots of blessing happening within the Jewish culture.
Yes, we believe that God bring the blessings to the world. So when we bless, we try to bring the blessing from God to the one who we bless, and we use the bless of Yaakov to his grandchildren, Ephraim and Menashe, on chapter 48, verse 8. It's written here on just a minute. 20, verse 20. ויברכם ביום ההוא לאמור, בך יברך ישראל לאמור, ישמחה אלוהים כאפרים וכמנשה. וישם את אפרים לפני מנשה. I translate the relevant part of this verse. So he blessed them that day, saying, by you shall Israel bless, saying, may God make you like Ephraim and like Menashe. That's the blessing that we bless on Shabbat. The children, may God make you like Ephraim and like Menashe. And you remind the bless of the Kohanim. It's another bless, another portion, and we add it to the bless to the children.
Also on Shabbat.
Also on Shabbat. And it's a bless is very important. It's not only to hope that your child accept bless. It's also to intend him to his role. When you tell someone, I bless you, you will be righteous, it's like to tell him, you have to do an effort to be righteous. Not only God will help you to be righteous, but also you have to fulfill this bless.
So it's almost like it's like a charge. It's like you're giving them, blessing them, that God would give them strength to fulfill.
That's right.
That, and that they would have courage to do that. You mentioned Ephraim and Manasseh here. It's interesting, this whole story about how Yaakov switched his hands, different ones. I always found that interesting because we have all of the jealousies and stuff between the brothers from before, and it seems like you're reading it going, "Whoa, what are you doing? Are you going to cause more problems here? Like, what's going on?" So, why was it that he chose to switch the older with the younger?
There is jealousy, but in the beginning, you can't ignore the unique role of each child or each grandchild, because it's forever, it's for generations, it's the role of the nation. You can't. The jealousy is problem, but it's not the biggest problem. You must give everyone his role, because without his role, it's like the redemption will not come. So, okay, we will confront the jealousy, but we will give the right role to everyone.
For the good of everybody, so that
That's right.
everybody operates in their role. We can all get to the redemption. Which that's kind of interesting, and it kind of leads me into the next question, because as you're reading through these blessings, you read through, and some of them sound almost more like curses than blessings. They're like hard. They're kind of negative. So why is it that Yaakov spoke these basically bad things about his children?
Like we talked, this bless is the last message of Yaakov to his sons, and they have great mission. They have to fulfill their mission, to change the world. And if someone need criticism, he must hear it now. It's the last time of Yaakov. He can't say it later. So this is the opportunity to tell them. And if someone has to change his behavior, he will tell him now. You have to know you failed. You can't stay with your failure.
So you're saying some of these things that were spoken that were negative wasn't necessarily saying this is who you will be, but it's who you are and you can change. Is that part of it, or?
I think it's who you are, but you can use it for the good or for the bad. And Yaakov focused them on their powers and remind them the time they fail to use their powers for the bad way, so they can learn from the history and change it.
Oh, interesting. Sometimes
we prefer to say good things for everyone and to be nice, but we can't fix the world with only the nice way.
Right. It's not always what's needed.
That's right.
Well, we don't have time to go through each one, but is there any particular one of the tribe's blessing that you have a thought about, or want to take a look a little bit closer?
Maybe we can say that the two sons that accept the longest blessings are Yehuda and Yosef. And they are two leaders. And they lead two manners, two subjects in the Jewish people. One is a king and one is the vice king.
Like the vice president or
Vice president?
like the second.
Yes, it's Yosef.
So in what way is that? Can you expound on that a little bit more? How is, because I think Judah being the king is pretty, it's clear and understood. How is Joseph?
Okay, in one sentence.
Yeah.
Yehuda is the king not because of his abilities in managing this reality, but because of his spiritual focus, his ideals. He is a king. He is the and Yosef, he has the skill to manage the reality. And sometimes it seems that he can be the king, but no. The king has to be the one with the ideas, and the one with the real abilities has to fulfill the ideals of the king.
Oh, that's good. All right, so then we have Yaakov passes away, and we have, like you were speaking earlier, this journey to go and bury him in the cave of Machpelah. And you mentioned earlier about this great mourning that everybody saw there. It's kind of an interesting thing. I think we've talked about this a little bit in other weeks and other portions too, but I want to touch on it again because I feel like it's a really important thing. I feel like in today's culture, mourning is seen as kind of a weakness. Like if you cry or if you show sadness, then you're being weak, and it's not good, not a good thing. But it's definitely something I've learned being here with you guys and seeing when somebody dies, how much you value the life and however many days that person was given. You remember all the good things that happened, and there's things like that you do, and then you mourn that this person is no longer with us. And we see that here. There's this great mourning that happens when Yaakov dies. Can you share with us a little bit about why it's important to mourn and to weep?
The common understanding of the death is when we think about the world that as physical world, so the death is the end. And nothing can be worth the death. Nothing can justify the death because it's the end. But if we understand that there is significance to the death, if we understand that there is soul that is not end with the death, so we can understand that there is role to the death also, and it's not nonsense. And maybe that's why we mourn, to say that there is a value to the life, and there is values behind the life that are more important than the life. So even when we confront the death, we can meet something higher. So when we experience death of our close people, we have to give it its place, the death. We have to say, okay, now it's not the end. He is going to another level of existence, and now things are signed in our world, and we can accept power from his good deeds to continue them in this world. It's not that we say, oh, it's good to die because we are going to another level of existence. No, it's not good. But there is a role to the death, for the death. There is role to take it like a point of the time that you can think about the history, about the life, and find the powers to deepen your life. So we have to see it 7 days, the family of the one who died, and talk about him, about his deeds, to accept comforts from our friends. So we can use his death to add good in the world.
Yeah, I think that's good. And I think within the Christian world, there's this thought that, kind of like you were saying, putting all the emphasis on the world to come and saying, oh, this world is just bad and evil and full of sin and fallen world. And so basically we're just kind of getting through life here, and then we get to go to heaven, and that's where it's all good. And like what you're saying, there is some truth to that. That is like it's the world to come. It's the better place. But I think there's like a lack of recognition of the importance of the role here on earth within a lot of Christian circles and the Christian thinking. And that's why, you have like monks who are trying to disconnect from any kind of earthly existence, those kind of things. And I remember for me, even when my grandfather passed away a little while ago, there was this feeling of, kind of a conflict of feelings of trying to figure out, okay, what should I feel? Because in some ways I feel happy for him that he's passed over and now he has entered into that good place. But at the same time, I was like, but I felt really sad. Like he's no longer here with us. But I think in some ways, for me at that time, I just tried to push those feelings away. Like, oh, I don't want to feel the bad feelings. I don't want to feel sad. It's good. He's gone on to the world to come, or waiting until then, however it works out, however that all works. But looking back on it now, I'm like, I think it would have been more healthy for me to have taken time to mourn and grieve and remember the good things that he did, but also recognize that he's no longer here, and I can't be with him and learn from him anymore. So I think that's something that I've definitely learned from the Jewish people, is taking that time to cry and to mourn and to recognize what you've lost is an important thing. Can you speak on that a little bit, of like why that's important, and recognizing what we've lost here on the earth? I don't know, does that make sense?
I think the most significance part of the mourning is the psychological influence, because the meet with the death is very difficult, and one can lose his trust in the life. Why should I live if the next step is death, whatever I will do. And maybe the mourning allow us to understand it and to accept it, that there is significance to the life, and we can use the time to make the world better place. And like our relative did in his life. And, always on the morning we focus on the good side of each one. We don't say, oh, he was so cruel, wow. No, we talk about his good behavior,
Right.
good deeds. And it allows us to continue our life with a optimistic view.
Wow, that's good. Well, it looks like we have run out of time again, but thank you so much, Rabbi Yonadav, for teaching us today and for bringing us truth, insights from God's Word. Really appreciate you taking time to teach us. And thanks to all of you guys who have joined with us today. Hope you guys have enjoyed and learned from this study today. We'd ask that you share with your friends and family. We want this message to go out to the world. If you have any feedback, you can send me an email at zach@hayovel.com. We'd love to hear from you guys. Thank you again for joining us. May God bless you, and Shabbat Shalom from the beautiful, exceedingly good land of Israel.